And welcome back, everyone, to the Pokemon Team Creation Series. Today's Pokemon Team Creation Series suggestion to round out September comes to us from Super Pasidel. I probably butchered the name before in the past, but here we are. Who asked the question, what is the Pokemon team of Aoi Todo? Todo? I am not overly familiar with JJK, despite my familiarity with many other animes and mangas. I am aware of the character, though. He's the one who his famous gimmick is to he claps and he just switches places with a target. And he can do this multiple times. You only need to clap with one hand to do it. It's a cool ability. And his signature ability is called the Boogie Woogie or something like that. But regardless, he was an interesting character to do a team for. Because on one hand, he's very basic. He's strictly hands. He fights with his hands. He can also do the Black Flash ability, which is basically a black energy flash of cursed energy in this case, under a couple milliseconds or whatever in terms of speed. Now, there are other traits to him that we'll get into in a little bit, but let's start out with the main one. He is a guy who apparently seeks out combat, seeks out fighting. He likes a good fight. Kind of gets his blood boiling. To me, I didn't want to go with one of the standard ones I've gone with Zangoose or, certain fighting Pokemon. I want to try to go a little different. And Incineroar came to mind. Now, Incineroar is a dark fire type, obviously, but he's based off a wrestler, particularly a heel wrestler. He likes to get hear the crowd pumping up. He likes to get them excited. He likes to entertain. So this did weirdly fit for me. I think this isn't a bad option for a Pokemon to represent. Not that he's a heel, but he's a guy who enjoys a good fight. And as his ace and a starter, that I think would make a lot of sense. But what about beyond that? Well, there's also a guy who likes to take his shirt off, flex for the ladies, show off. One of his trademark things is asking someone, what kind of girls do you like? And so I decided to go with Machoke for that. Now, Machoke is obviously a big, muscly Pokemon. He's not the true original fighting type. Primeape and Mankey come before him in the Pokedex, but by all accounts, the Machop line are the most iconic fighting type line there is, apart from maybe the Hitmons. But I wanted to go Machoke because he is still a high schooler. He's not fully, he's not fully matured yet. He is kind of warped in a few ways. But as a Pokemon that has a lot of muscle, has the belt on it, flexes a lot. I like the Machoke for this, especially as an intermediate Pokemon. Beyond that, though, we also have his third Pokemon here, which is a Pokemon to represent and I gotta actually find the ability's name again. I'm not gonna look for it, it's fine. The ability to clap and switch places. Basically, teleporting. Because there's no Pokemon that does exactly what this is doing. It's swapping two spots, basically doing the antithesis from Bleach in many ways. Or Sasuke's Rinnegan's ability, or Char-Rinnegan ability. But in essence, what he's doing is teleporting. So I knew I needed a Pokemon that teleported. Now, while I didn't want to go with a fully evolved Machoke, I was willing to go with a fully evolved Alakazam, because it is a Pokemon that learns teleport. It's one of the essential ones. Also, it's a Pokemon that uses a metal item. It's got the two spoons along with it. It's always got the two spoons. Now, why do I actually find that important? Because while it's not often he uses a cursed item, he still will use a cursed item. And later on in the series, he even loses his hand and replaces it with I can't remember if it was a bell, or it was basically a little musical, kind of a musical instrument that basically had a bell rattling around, and he essentially converted the usage of his ability to flip back and forth instead of clapping to shaking the metal item. I can't remember exactly what it was. But because of that, he can it's actually even more effective than using his hand. Now he can rattle it and he can move in multiple spots with it in seconds like that. It's insane now how powerful that makes the ability. And because of that, Alakazam is a very powerful psychic type. It's not a glass cannon, but it's physically weak. However, its strength is in its psychic abilities, special attack, special defense. Along the way, he also would gain the Swak, just because Swak, I think, works better than Throw here. It's a standard fighting type. He's oftentimes wearing some form of, formal fighting wear. So I like that as well. And to represent the Black Flash, you had to add Lucario on there as well, I think, because it's the first official user, I believe, of the move Aura Sphere. Granted, Pokemon like Mewtwo, Darkrai, many other Pokemon got Aura Sphere down the road, but Lucario really was kind of the first one to use it. And it's kind of a good representation, I think, of Black Flash, at least combined with a fighting-type Pokemon. There are, sure, fighting-type moves that kind of work in the same way, but not really. But last but not least, what's that last Pokemon sitting there on the team? What's it doing? Well, because what's the best way to put it? He's not a glitch of a guy, but he's not 100% there, man. Like, he's a loyal, good friend to, like, is it Yuji? Yuji is the name of the main character from JJK. He's a good friend to him. He's got your back when you need to. He loves a good fight, but he's also kind of a little warped in his head. He is kind of weird. And because of that, I'm like, okay, is there any other fighting type I can go with? And I'm like, well, this guy last one I'd hope would be like one of his major hitters. Like, his heaviest hitter on the team right now is arguably Incineroar. Alakazam, for example, if they had to go toe-to-toe, would lose to Incineroar because it's a dark type versus a psychic type, and a powerful dark type at that. Lucario is possibly a good second pick, though, but Lucario's fire type kind of puts him over that, as well as, learning fighting type moves. But I knew I had to put something else on the team, and I liked the idea of Iron Valiant. Iron Valiant, being a Paradox Mon, is obviously a combination, for anyone who knows, and most of us in the community knows, of Gallade and Gardevoir put together into like one cybernetic killing machine. But, as it's described, there was something that went wrong. In fact, I'm going to get Iron Valiant. Iron Valiant Pokedex. I believe there was something that went wrong in its programming, and in essence, it's now glitched. So there's something off with Valiant. I can't remember exactly how to describe. I'm finding it right now. According to Valiant is a future Pokemon related to Gardevoir. Gallade, however, according to Turo at the Crystal Pool, it's a counterpart to when our talent true origin is unknown. Okay. According to the article in April's issue of Occulture magazine, its name is borrowed from the object described as the Violet Book. An unproven theory claims that it is a robot built as a product of mad scientist efforts to create the most powerful psychic Pokemon. According to eyewitnesses, Iron Valiant, similar to appearance to Gardevoir and Gallade, it's also said to be a cruel Pokemon, willing to take its shining blade and cut down anyone in front of it without hesitation. When it falls asleep, it often turns off, causing the pink energy ponytails on it to, on its ponytails, core blades, feet, and dress to turn black. So, again, I'm trying where it was said, but it's basically said to something went wrong. I'm trying to remember exactly where it said it, but something went off when they were making this Pokemon, and so something is just not altogether there with it. So I liked it because it's both a fighting type. It still is trying to do good, but it's also kind of cruel, which he can be as well. So as always, the question becomes twofold. How balanced is this team, and how well would it do trying to become the champion in any one of these games? And the answer is not as balanced as I would have hoped. It has a quad 4 weakness to Psychic, with the only two ones not weak are Alakazam because it's already Psychic, and then Incineroar being immune. Fairy type, again, 3 of these guys are Fairy, so they're already or Psychic type, or fighting types. 3 guys are fighting types, so they're already in trouble. Or 4 of these guys, I should say, are fighting types, so they're already in trouble. However, both Iron Valiant and Lucario have a secondary type. Fairy is resistant to Fairy, at least from what I remember and what I looked up. And Steel obviously resists Fairy, but unfortunately, Incineroar is... it's not Fairy that's resistant to Fairy. It's Fire that's resistant to Fairy. Fairy does not resist Fairy. That's where I went off here. Luckily, Steel does resist Fairy, so Incineroar and Lucario are able to resist Fairy, but the other 3, Valiant, Choke, and Swak, not so much. Flying is also a problem, as 3 of these Mon just can't do anything against flying types. Then there are 2 Mon on the team that are just straight out weak to fighting, and that would be Lucario and Incineroar. Both their secondary types are weak to fighting with no resistance from the other 2. And then finally, 2 of these guys are weak to ground. Again, Incineroar and Lucario. In Sicario. That's the 3rd one. No, it's not. It doesn't exist. So it's not the most balanced team. Psychic, again, runs through the majority of this team, which would prove a problem in some of these regions, certainly. But that being said, how balanced is this team? And right out the gate, you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle with Brock, but you might be okay. But then you'll struggle with Misty, who, with her water types and Starmie being psychic, and if I remember correctly, might know in confusion. I can't remember. You may not be able to even get past Misty. Assuming you can, honestly, after that, there's no other real threats you face. You clear, because once you get to, because the beauty of Alakazam is, the lowest level Alakazam you can have is a level 16 Alakazam, because that's when Kadabra evolves, or Abra evolves into Kadabra. So no matter what, because Alakazam is the third mountain you would get in your journey, you'll always have an early Alakazam, which is great. Lucario is the same way. Lucario evolves through friendship during the day. In theory, if you just pump it up enough, you can, in essence, have a level, well, let's say you just catch a level 5 Raylo, you could have a level 6 Lucario and be done with it. So, yeah, it's not impossible to get a lot of these guys early on. And because of that, Alakazam's going to cleave through huge swaths of the Kanto region on its own. By the time you even get to someone who would be kind of a threat, like Sabrina, and again, Sabrina would be challenging, but Incineroar being a dark type and just being immune to any psychic moves, then even being able to counter the Venomoth with fire moves should be fine. Even though 2/3 of this team just gets cleaved through by psychic, that one starter dark type helps out a great deal. Then you would get through Giovanni, no problem. Even though you have 2 Mon weak to ground, you still have enough Mon fighting type moves to deal with their rock ground types, and then you'd be fine otherwise. In fact, your biggest problems really would probably be like the Nidos, because they are ground poison. So something like Iron Valiant might struggle, but then Alakazam, being strong to poison, counters that. None of the Elite Four would really be any challenge to you. You will be able to deal with the ice types of Lorelei and the water types, no problem. Bruno's 2 Onix are going down fast. And Alakazam can take care of the fighting. Agatha's poison types and ghost types really are just going to be taken care of by both Incineroar and Alakazam. Lance is a little difficult, but the fact is Iron Valiant, especially its Gen 1, so Iron Valiant shouldn't make things relatively easy. Blue is your only real competitor because his team is a lot more balanced than your team is. And if I remember correctly, his team almost always has an Alakazam on it. Because it goes Pidgeot, I want to say it's Electabuzz. Why don't I just get Blue's team up here right now? Because I'm blanking on the balance of Blue's team. Because he usually has 3 consistent Mon, and then 2 Mon that vary based on the starter he has. For example, if he has Blastoise on the team, I believe he has Arcanine and Exeggutor. I believe. If he's got Gyarados, if he's got Charizard on the team, well, then he has Gyarados and Exeggutor. And then if he has Venusaur on the team, then he has Gyarados and why am I blanking? Oh, Arcanine on the team. So yeah, I believe it's Alakazam, Pidgeot, Alakazam, and Electabuzz. I believe. But I might be mistaken on that. And the problem immediately is Incineroar you're probably going to lead with Incineroar, so he's not going to go into Alakazam. Instead, he's probably going to go into one of his other Pokemon that could be good against Alakazam or Incineroar, which in his case would most likely be his water type. If I were to, let's see here now. Okay, Leaf Red and Fire Green. There we go. So I can get Blue's team up here in front of me real quick. Elite Four. There we go. There we go. Boop-a-doop, boop-a-doop. All right. Enough of that crap. Okay, yeah. No. I was wrong. It wasn't Electabuzz. It was Rhydon. That's who it is. The 3 consistent ones are Pidgeot, Alakazam, and Rhydon. Then Gyarados, Arcanine for Venusaur, Exeggutor, Gyarados for Charizard, and Arcanine, Exeggutor for Blastoise. So you're probably going to take down the Pidgeot with very little issue with Incineroar. Then the water or ground type is going to come in on Rhydon or Gyarados, and immediately you've got a problem because that thing is going to be able to take down Even with Incineroar being able to learn fighting type moves, Gyarados, you have no good answer for Gyarados. Right on, if you got a fighting type move, you should be okay. But assuming Incineroar goes down, that means you now got to deal with whatever he's dealing with there. Now, luckily, you should be okay with either Lucario or Alakazam here. Luckily speaking, also, he has no answer for Alakazam on this team. None of these Mon know any bug moves. None of these Mon know any dark moves, except for maybe like a Bite or a Crunch. So, now I'm not saying now if you were to do the rematch team, you'd have both a Heracross and a Tyrantrum, and that's a completely different thing in Fire Red, Leaf Green. Then you're got a problem you've got a serious problem on your hand. But I'm not gonna say you can't beat him. You definitely can, but it's not an easy win. Well, what about Johto? Honestly, you'll have a clean sweep through the entirety of Johto. Because by the time you get to Wagner's no problem for one Litten. Again, handle bugs no problem. Even Whitney, once you have a fully evolved Alakazam, you're going to just tank through that Milk Tank. It's one of the few times you will very easily take care of that Milk Tank. In which case, then Incineroar won't be evolved yet, but you'll be able to handle Morty no problem. You should be able to handle Chuck. You definitely handle Jasmine. Price, no problem. Even Claire, because you have a very strong Paradox Fighting Fairy type on the team, you should be able to handle that without any difficulty. And the Elite Four is relatively easy as well. 1 second here. Well, since I'm already on the page, might as well use these for references. Where are you, Jim? There you go. Guys, the Elite Four in was it Heart Gold, Soul Silver? There you go. Heart Gold, Soul Silver. Blanking on that for a second. They're not that, because it's Will first with his Psychic type Mon, and frankly, you have a Dark type, and you have a Dark type. The only Mon on the team that even threatens Incineroar would be Slowbro, and if you really feel that threatened by it, just use a physical Dark type move or a special Dark type move, or just switch out to, Alakazam just to take a hit or something. So there's that. Then Koga. He's got literally 3 Mon on the team that are weak to fire. You'll have no problem with that. Then you have Bruno against all fighting types except for Onix, 1 Onix. Then you got Karen, who you don't admittedly have that good answer for all these. She literally has every Dark Mon on the team in the game that was introduced on the team, like literally, except for Sneasel. She does not have Sneasel on the team. Or Tyranitar, to be fair. But so your Psychic type moves are not going to be any good against the Dark types, to be sure. But that's where you get the fighting types to come in to deal damage. And Psychic's still good against poison, so Vileplume and Gengar aren't going to be an issue. Ironically, Murkrow's the only one they kind of have a problem with because it's flying dark, so you don't actually have a good answer on the team for that. But again, Alakazam can in fact learn things like Thunder Punch, so it's not that big a deal. Not naturally, mind you, but still. Then you got Champion Lance, who Lance is a bit of a problem in this version because he's got 3 Dragonites, 1 Gyarados, an Aerodactyl, and a Charizard. If I remember correctly, he leads with the Gyarados. That's not something you want to be starting out with your Incineroar, and you don't have a good answer for Gyarados. So you're already going to be struggling here. I would probably go into either Alakazam or Lucario here. Maybe go, because you want to hold on to Iron Valiant. Any of his Dragonites, you definitely bring in Iron Valiant. The problem is, though, Iron Valiant's still going to be able to is not going to be able to take every single hit and dish out every single hit. Despite being a Paradox, it only has 570 for its base stat. Dragonites are still 600. And then you still got to deal with the Charizard, who's going to end Lucario whenever it gets a chance to do that. You got the Aerodactyl, who admittedly doesn't have any strength against you, but it's not easy to put down with what you have. It's definitely possible to beat Lance. I will say that. Lance is certainly a possibility. But what about a slightly stronger individual? What about, say, the Hoenn Elite Four and Steven and then the Elite Four in that region? Well, you go with Sydney first. Well, actually, let's actually start with the actual gym leaders. And right out the gate, you have a problem. Because Roxanne and Brawly... Roxanne, I honestly don't think you can get past Roxanne, if I'm going to be honest. 1 Litten who can't even evolve yet and who's not going to be able to evolve by the time you get there. Even if you overlevel it like 2 levels, which is my maximum I'm allowed to overlevel. it still won't be evolved to fight the nose pass. And even if it was, it doesn't know moves to beat the nose pass or the 2 Geodude, depending on which version you like. It's even if you can get past it, you still got to then deal with Brawly. And that's a problem because, again, Torracat and, in this case, Machop are only going to be able to do so much. Now, that being said, it's now not impossible to get past Brawly. I just don't think you're getting past Roxanne. Hypothetically, after that, though, it's mostly a cakewalk because then you got to just deal with Watson, burn it with your fire type. Then you got to deal with Flannery, who you should be able to just muscle through. Norman, you should have no problem muscling through. Winona is a bit of an issue, definitely. The flying type is, like I said, a weakness for this team. And then Liza and Tate being, psychic users and dual psychic users, like double team or double battles, that's problematic to say the least. It is not the best scenario for you, if we're being honest here. It's difficult to be dealing with Liza and Tate. But luckily you have a dark type. And you have and you still have fighting types, which still should be able to do at least something, even though they're resisted. And you have a steel type in Lucario. And then whoever I think it's Juan is the, not Juan, Wallace, who is the champion in this case. Then if you go to the Elite Four, well, then you actually are pretty okay for a while, because you should be able to take Sydney with no problem. Phoebe is going to be a problem because ghost type, and you can only have so many non-ghost type moves. But Incineroar should be able to carry a lot of that. Then Glacia, who has traded up those Celios for, if you're going by Omega Sapphire and Omega Ruby and Sapphire. They traded basically those Celios for Frostlass, which means this team now just became a lot weaker too. Ice type or fire type moves. So you should have no problem there. It all comes down to the last two once again. Drake himself, in theory, if you just leveled him up more, could be a champion in his own right. Like, if you're going by the Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire team, he has 2 Flygon, both with Earthquake. Sorry, one with Earthquake, one Earthquake, Dragon Pulse, Rock Slide, Supersonic, the other Flamethrower, Boom Burst, Dragon Pulse, Screech, a freaking Salamence, Kingdra, and a nice little Altaria to boot. Like, this guy is a menace. He really is. And you do not have, except for your Paradoxmon, you have no answers to freaking dragons at all. And even then, honestly, that Iron Valiant isn't making it through this entire fight. There's just no way. It's going to get outsped by Salamence. I think it might even get outsped by Flygon. I don't actually remember how fast Iron Valiant is. One hit is it's probably not going to put down every single one of these Mon, particularly because 3 of them, they all have some level of resistances. It's just, I'm not sure you get past Drake. First off, I don't think you get past Roxanne, and I don't think you can get past Drake. And even then, Steven's a maybe? Like, if you can get all the way to Steven, because he has a Rock Grass or Rock Steel, you might, it's basically enough Mon that the fighting type could play a factor, and then Incineroar to help with, like, say, Metagross and Skarmory. It's not impossible. I just don't think you're getting that far is the problem. So then that immediately that brings us to Sinnoh. I'm going to tell you right now, you aren't getting past Rorik. You just don't get past Rorik. And even if you did, you'd have to make it all the way to the Elite Four just to get stonewalled by Bertha. Lucian, I believe, is the name of the psychic gym leader, which again, or Elite Former, which again, you have no strong, you have the big weakness to. And then Cynthia, who's so versatile, you have no answer. Except for their one fairy fighting type, you have no answer for that Spiritomb on this team. Which is problematic, to say the least. Actually, that's not true. Incineroar can kind of do some work, but even then, her team's way too balanced. It's just messed up. Well, what about Unova? I think, honestly, with Unova, you would immediately find problems with Lisa. Just due to the fact of those Omolgas and being able outspeeding most of what you have at that point and taking down 2 of your guys pretty quick. Then you would have to deal with I think you probably would actually be okay against Iris and Drayden. The Elite Four's Ghost type user would be somewhat problematic. The Elite Four Psyche type user would be problematic. Even the Ghost type user, actually, the Ghost Psychic, those two would be problematic. And then Iris and Adler. Adler's team is weird, so I don't know if you could really beat Adler just because Bug, the only one you really have to deal with those Excavalier and Selgor is your Incineroar. And then that's assuming he doesn't get taken down by the Buffalont or the Druddigon or his ace Volcarona, which again, Volcarona, you have absolutely no good pick against Volcarona on this team. Volcarona's bug typing and fire typing take care of simultaneously, or not simultaneously, but together take care of Alakazam. They take care of Lucario. They make them resistant to Swak and Machoke. Iron Valiant does not have a good answer to it, so that Volcarona alone is going to work your team over. And Iris having so many dragons and 3 non-dragons with Lapras, which can basically deal with Incineroar, Aggron, which admittedly you should be able to deal with the Aggron, and Archeops, I think it is, which don't have a good answer for that one. I don't think you could be champion. You might be able to, but it's a little remains to be seen. Well, what about Kalos? Honestly, no joke, this is the first one I say yes, you can become champion of Kalos. The only one you would actually struggle with straight out is Diantha herself. That's the only one you would actually legitimately struggle with. Hawlucha is fast, but Incineroar should be able to take it down. You can just bring out Iron Valiant to deal with the 2 dragon types on the team whenever you have to. Auroras would be going down to any one of these fighting types. The Gourgeist admittedly is a little more tricky, but it's a grass ghost type, so Incineroar, if it's still around, should be able to handle that. And honestly, at that point, you're just dealing with a Mega Gardevoir, which is tough. Like, there's no good answer for that. But you have enough Mon on this team, along with Alakazam, to, I think, be able to pull the win out. So, yes, I think you can be champion with this team. Well, what about Galar? Honestly, I think you actually stop at Kobu. Because you don't have any solid answers to Ninetales, Arcanine, or his Centiskorch. Incineroar is not fully evolved at this point. Machoke, I think you could have it evolved at this point. Now, Alakazam, as strong as it is weak to Bug. So once you get to Centiskorch, this thing is going to just that thing's going to run your team. Because unfortunately, fighting isn't good against Bug. And because it's a fire type, Incineroar's fire, or in this case, Torracat's fire typing actually doesn't mean anything here. So unfortunately, no, I think you'd stop immediately at Kobu. And even if you could get past Kobu, you're once again walled at Leon. Because again, that goddamn Dragapult is just insane to get through. Now, granted, you do have a strong enough fairy on this team that the Dragapult might be able to be handled. But still, you would have to probably be going through a lot of hurdles to get through it. And that thing's going down the next turn to the Haxorus. No. And then finally, honestly, it just, again, comes down to the Elite Four when it comes to Paldea. Rika is going to stonewall you with a lot of those ground types. You don't have a good answer to those ground types in this team. In fact, 2 of your Mon are, in fact, weak to ground. Even if you could get past Rika, Poppy, you should be okay with. Larry, not so much. The flying type is versatile here, and it's a problem for this team. And then Hassel, the dragon type specialist. I don't think you're getting past him either, quite frankly. But look, that's just my opinion. I think the only region you could guarantee become the champion in is is Kalos. I think that's the only one you can become champion in. That being said, this is just my opinion. Let me know what you think. Put it in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Suggestions for videos, as always. I'll see you for the next one. I got a pre-record. I got to still do my Who Would Win. I got a pre-record tomorrow's Who Would Win. I got to also do box office and pre-record Lantern. So I got a lot more to do, but we'll get to it when we get to it.